The first thing Ethan Rowe noticed that Christmas Eve was how wrong the silence felt. Brooklyn was never truly quiet, not even on a holiday. There were always distant sirens, someone shouting, a television leaking laughter through thin walls. Tonight his building felt padded, like the world had been wrapped in cotton. He sat at the small kitchen table, a file open beside his MacBook Pro, the glow of the screen turning his tired face pale. Next to it, a half-empty Starbucks cup left a damp ring on the wood. He had promised himself he would finish this motion before midnight. He was on the same sentence for the third time. Christmas used to be his wife's favorite night of the year. Ethan stared at the blinking cursor and ordered himself not to go there. He pushed back from the table and looked toward the narrow window over the sink. A strip of dark sky showed between buildings, and far away the Manhattan skyline glittered like a postcard somebody had taped to the horizon. Down on the street, someone laughed, a car door slammed, then the sounds faded again. He told himself he should be grateful for a quiet building. The landlord had finally fixed the pipes. The young couple downstairs, the woman with the baby, seemed to argue less these days. The baby still cried at strange hours, but babies did that. He checked the time on his phone, 11:38 p.m. Ethan bent over the file again, but the photos in the corner drew his eyes away from the text. Bruises across a woman's ribs, a split lip, tiny finger-shaped marks on a pale arm. So many clients, so many stories, all beginning with the same line, "I fell." The first sound he heard was not a cry. It was a scrape, sudden and sharp, wood sliding hard against wood somewhere below his feet. The noise ran up his spine like cold water. For a heartbeat, the apartment blurred, and he was not in Brooklyn anymore. He was back in another kitchen, another winter, hearing a chair skid before everything in his life broke. Then came the thud. Heavy, final, like a body hitting unforgiving floorboards. The silence that followed roared in his ears. He waited for a curse, a shaky laugh, someone saying, "I'm okay." Nothing came. The baby's cry sliced through the ceiling a moment later. It started as a simple wail, then turned jagged and wild, the sound of a little chest running out of air. Ethan's chair scraped back, loud in the small room. His hands shook, not from the cold. He told himself he was overreacting, a man haunted by memories that would not stay buried. But his feet were already moving. He opened his apartment door. The hallway's fluorescent light flickered, turning the peeling paint a sickly yellow. From the door of apartment 2B below, the crying poured out in muffled waves. He walked down the stairs, each step a dull echo under his boots. Ethan stopped outside 2B and raised his hand to knock. For a moment he just stood there, knuckles hovering inches from the wood. What if it was nothing, he thought. What if he was about to kick in the door of a normal family on Christmas Eve because he could not leave the past alone? Then he heard a man's voice through the door, low and hard. "Shut that kid up," the voice snapped, full of a tired anger that had nowhere left to go. He slammed into the door. Before the night, everything shattered. Hannah Whitmore believed she could survive one more month. She repeated that phrase each morning while buttoning her thrift store coat, carrying her baby girl on one hip and ignoring the tight pull in her lower back from the pregnancy. Life had become a set of tired routines. Clock in at the Brooklyn grocery store, smile through customers' impatience, hurry home before Cole grew irritated, lull the baby to sleep, and pretend the walls around her were not closing in. Every hour felt borrowed, every breath measured. She had not always lived like a shadow of herself. Before Cole's temper hardened into something she feared, they had shared small dreams. Saving for a better apartment, taking weekend trips, building a family that felt safer than her own childhood. But dreams shrank fast in cramped rooms. Cole began monitoring her texts, then her bank card, then her schedule. His compliments faded into sharp criticism. The man who once brought her flowers after long shifts now demanded explanations for every delayed bus or missed call. Somewhere in those months, Hannah learned to move quietly. That December afternoon, 6 hours before the scrape that jolted Ethan upstairs, Hannah stood at the grocery store register, rubbing her swollen ankles. The holiday rush had emptied her energy. Customers shoved carts overflowing with ham, sparkling cider, and last-minute decorations. She scanned items mechanically, forcing a smile that never reached her eyes. Her manager, Mr. Collins, noticed her wince and asked whether she needed a break, but she shook her head. Every minute off her feet meant fewer dollars on her check, and she needed every penny. Cole had warned her that if she came home short again, there would be consequences. When her shift ended, snow drifted softly across the parking lot, gathering on her thin coat. Hannah hurried toward the bus stop, clutching the small bag of discounted groceries she had bought for herself and the baby. Inside were basics: rice, formula, 1 apple, barely enough for 2 days. She imagined Cole's reaction if he saw the receipt. He wanted every cent accounted for, as though generosity were a luxury he could no longer afford. The bus arrived late, heaters blasting stale warmth over tired commuters. Hannah settled into a corner seat, rubbing her belly and whispering promises she no longer believed. By the time she reached the apartment building, darkness had swallowed the street. The stairwell light flickered as she climbed, each step sending a dull ache through her back. From inside 2B, she already sensed the tension. Cole hated when she worked late, though he insisted she keep the job. She slid the key into the lock and paused. The apartment smelled of whiskey. Cole sat at the table, scrolling through her phone, which she must have left charging. His eyes did not rise when she entered. They narrowed instead, collecting anger the way storms gather lightning. Hannah set the grocery bag on the counter, her pulse tripping with every second of silence. She asked quietly where the baby was, and Cole jerked his chin toward the bedroom without answering. She could hear faint breathing through the cracked door, thank God. When she turned back, Cole held up her phone like evidence. A single missed call from her mother glowed on the screen. He demanded to know why she still talked to people who poisoned her mind, his voice rising with each word. Hannah tried to explain she had not even answered, but the explanation only fueled him further. His shoulders tightened, as though preparing for a storm about to break. Cole Henderson had a way of filling a room even when he wasn't speaking. His silence was never empty. It vibrated, stretched, tightened like a rope pulled between 2 hands. Hannah felt that silence now as she stood frozen by the kitchen counter, her fingers brushing the thin plastic of the grocery bag. The apartment was dim except for the yellow lamp flickering beside him, casting long shadows across his face. He wasn't drunk enough to stumble, which was always worse. Drunk Cole slurred, sober angry Cole calculated. He set her phone down carefully, almost gently, as if handling something fragile. "You think I wouldn't notice?" he said, his tone soft in the way that made her chest seize. Hannah opened her mouth, but the words tangled. She wasn't sure what version of the truth he expected. Cole leaned back in his chair, nodding toward the groceries. "We're barely scraping by, and you're out buying apples? Formula again? You go through money like water." Hannah swallowed hard. "She's growing," she whispered. "The doctor said." "I don't care what some doctor said." He cut her off with a dismissive wave. "We're in debt because you can't control yourself." Debt. The word settled over her like a weight. Cole never said how deep it went, only that he had it handled. But the late-night phone calls, the sudden need for cash, the panic in his eyes when bills arrived, she knew something was wrong long before he admitted it. Now every cent she earned vanished into the black hole he refused to name. He stood, pacing slowly, rolling his shoulders the way he always did before anger took shape. Hannah instinctively stepped back. Her spine pressed into the counter. She didn't want him to see the fear in her eyes, but fear had a scent, and Cole inhaled it like fuel. "You know what your problem is?" he said. "You think you deserve better than this." He gestured at the cramped kitchen, the stained linoleum floor, the rattling refrigerator. "But this is reality, Hannah. This is what families look like when the woman can't get her act together." Something inside her flickered. Not anger, exhaustion. A bone-deep tiredness from months of being bent until she nearly split. "I'm trying," she said softly. Cole laughed once, sharp and humorless. "Try harder." He moved toward the bedroom, muttering under his breath. Hannah exhaled, letting her body sag for a moment. Maybe it would end here tonight, with words instead of fists. Maybe he had reached the edge of whatever storm had been building. But Cole stopped at the hallway, turning back to her. His expression shifted, calculating, suspicious. "Where's the rest of it?" "The rest of what?" "The money you made tonight." Hannah blinked. "I put it in the jar on the shelf. You can check." He did. He lifted the jar, shook it, frowned. "This is short." "It's not," Hannah said quickly. "We had fewer customers tonight. The tips were low." Cole stepped closer. "You lying to me?" Her pulse thudded. No, I would never. His hand slammed the counter beside her, rattling a stack of plates. The baby stirred in the bedroom with a soft cry. Hannah's heart clenched. She waited for Cole to turn toward the sound, but he didn't. His eyes were fixed on her. You think you can hide things from me? I'm not hiding anything. Then why, he growled, did your mother call you again? Hannah froze. Cole's jaw flexed. You think I'll let her take you away from me? Take my kid? You think I don't know what she tells you? Leave him, come home, start over? He leaned in, breath hot with whiskey. There is no home for you, except here. The baby cried louder. Hannah tried to move toward the bedroom, but Cole blocked her path with one arm. She felt the familiar dread rising inside her chest, the kind that preceded a bruise. Answer me, he demanded. She forced her voice steady. I didn't talk to her. I swear, Cole, please. His fingers twitched. The storm hadn't passed at all. It had only been waiting for a place to land. And tonight, it chose her. Lena Carter liked to describe herself as someone who never settled. Not for jobs, not for men, not for the dull life she'd watched her mother endure for decades. She was born with sharp instincts. She could sniff out weakness the way a shark senses blood in water. And the moment she met Cole Henderson at the luxury dealership in Manhattan, she scented opportunity. He wore expensive watches he couldn't quite afford, bragged louder than his sales numbers justified, carried himself like a man trying to outrun something. Men like that were easy to steer. But what hooked her wasn't his charm, it was his desperation. Desperation made people useful. That afternoon, while Hannah trudged home from the grocery store shift, Lena lounged in the break room of the dealership, scrolling through her phone as coworkers passed around holiday cookies. She wasn't in the mood for sweetness. The nausea she'd felt for a week had returned, low and insistent. She tapped a finger against her stomach, more irritated than worried. The timing was terrible. She hadn't even told the father yet because she wasn't completely sure who the father was. But she knew one thing. Cole adored her. Or rather, he adored who he thought she was. He liked her ambition, her boldness, the way she laughed at his jokes even when they weren't funny. She told him he was capable of more, and he believed her because he needed anyone to believe in him. Men like Cole craved validation the way others craved oxygen. She'd planned to use him as a stepping stone, a boyfriend with a stable paycheck, a guy who looked good beside her in photos, someone who could help her climb toward the life she wanted. She never intended to build a future with him. But the second those pregnancy tests gave their pink verdict, her calculations changed. Cole needed to leave his messy wife before he dragged Lena down with him. When he walked into the break room that evening, Lena's eyes flicked up. He looked tired, edges frayed. She knew what the holidays did to him: pressure, guilt, debts coming due. Perfect. Vulnerable men were easier to push. You look rough, she said lightly, crossing her legs. Cole dropped into the chair across from her, rubbing his temples. It's Hannah. She's making everything harder. She's still working that cashier job? Lena asked, feigning boredom. She won't quit. Of course she won't, Lena thought. She's the only adult between you two. But she didn't say it. Instead, she softened her gaze, leaning closer. You deserve better, Cole. His shoulders relaxed as if the words were a balm. You think so? I know so. She let her fingers graze his wrist. Imagine a fresh start. A clean apartment. No crying baby all night. No bills she keeps messing up. Just you and someone who actually wants a life with you. His breathing hitched. She saw the moment the idea took root. She pressed harder. End it before Christmas, Cole, or she'll trap you forever. He nodded slowly, defeated and eager all at once. I don't know how to make her go. You don't need to make her go. Lena shrugged. You just need to push her hard enough that she leaves. The words seemed harmless coming from her lips. But they landed heavily inside Cole, forming a blueprint for the storm brewing later that night. Before leaving, she kissed him soft, calculated, promising. As he walked away, Lena placed a protective hand over her stomach. She didn't love Cole. She didn't even particularly like him. But she needed him. Just for a little while longer. And she had no idea her smallest lie would ignite a disaster she couldn't control. Snow had begun to fall in slow, heavy flakes by the time Hannah finished cleaning the kitchen. Cole had shut himself in the bedroom, muttering something about needing quiet. She didn't argue. The less she said, the less she risked. The baby's soft breathing through the cracked door was the only steady sound in the apartment. Hannah let her fingers rest briefly on her rounded belly, reminding herself that 2 little lives depended on her keeping the peace, no matter how unstable it became behind these walls. She glanced at the small, artificial Christmas tree she'd picked up from the clearance bin outside the grocery store. It leaned to one side, decorated with mismatched ornaments she'd found in an old box at the thrift shop. She'd bought it for the baby because even if life was hard, even if the world outside their apartment was cold and sharp, she wanted her daughter to have a memory of light. But Cole hated the tree, claimed it cluttered the room. Every day she expected him to throw it out. Hannah sat on the couch, rubbing her sore wrists. Her job required endless scanning, lifting, bagging. Her body was stretched thin by pregnancy and stress. But she wasn't naive, she knew things had gotten worse. Cole's temper changed shape lately. Less yelling, more glaring. Less shoving, more intimidation. It was like he'd started studying her, searching for weak spots the way a man studies a lock he's planning to break. She didn't have anyone to talk to. Her mother's number lit up her phone earlier that day, but Hannah hadn't answered. Not because she didn't want to, she wanted nothing more than to hear a voice that wasn't angry, but because Cole had made it clear. Family calls meant betrayal, and betrayal meant punishment. The apartment door creaked open. Hannah's heart jolted. Cole stepped out of the bedroom, his shirt half-buttoned, hair messy. He moved with a strange, restless energy. "You going somewhere?" she asked quietly. He didn't answer immediately. He grabbed his coat from the hook, checking himself in the mirror with a scowl. "Showroom's doing a late holiday get-together," he said finally. "I'm expected to show face." Hannah blinked. "It's almost 9. He turned sharply. "You questioning me now?" "No," she whispered, "just asking." Cole slipped his wallet into his pocket. His eyes landed on the cheap Christmas tree, and for a moment she saw something in his face. Irritation? Resentment? Maybe both. He scoffed, then moved closer to her, lowering his voice. "Don't call anyone while I'm gone. Don't leave, and don't touch my things." "I won't," Hannah said, because she always said that. But he didn't move. His stare lingered too long, as if he suspected she was hiding something, as if he wanted her to slip just enough so he'd have a reason to explode. Finally, he opened the door and left. The lock clicked behind him. Hannah sagged into the couch, relief loosening her shoulders for the first time all day. She picked up the baby, holding her close, breathing in the soft scent of milk and baby powder. Her daughter clung to her shirt, tiny fingers curling, unaware of the tension that kept their world fragile. Minutes stretched into an hour. Hannah reheated leftover soup, ate mechanically, bathed the baby, changed into her worn sleep shirt. She tried calling the grocery store's automated schedule line to confirm her next shift, but hung up when she realized Cole might check the call log. Just after 11, her phone buzzed, one message from an unknown number. "Your husband is here. With someone. Thought you should know." Her breath hitched. The name on the message, history revealed everything. Lena Carter. Hannah stared at the screen until it blurred. She wasn't surprised. She wasn't even angry. She was tired, soul-tired, bone-tired, heart-tired. But something inside her shifted, a small, painful crack. Because if Cole wasn't coming home for her, then tonight, something terrible might be coming home for her instead. The message from Lena glowed on Hannah's cracked phone screen long after her hand went numb from holding it. She kept rereading it, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something harmless. But they didn't. They stayed sharp and cold, spelling out a truth she had always known but never wanted confirmed. Cole was with another woman tonight, not just angry, not just distant, but choosing someone else. Her first instinct was to cry. Her second was fear. If he was drinking, and if Lena was pushing him the way she often did, Cole wouldn't come home gentle. She knew the patterns. Every bad night at the showroom became a worse night inside their apartment. But what scared her more was the tone he'd had before leaving, tight, brittle, like a man teetering at the edge of something he couldn't name. Hannah paced the living room, the faint glow of the leaning Christmas tree flickering across the walls. The baby stirred in her sleep, tiny arms jerking beneath the blanket. Hannah bent over the crib, placing a soft kiss on her daughter's forehead. "It's okay," she whispered, though she didn't believe it. "Mommy's right here." She considered calling her mother. Just hearing her voice would have helped. But the moment she imagined Cole checking her call log, her stomach twisted. She had survived this long by avoiding the things that set him off. And contacting her mother was at the top of that list. Instead, she sat on the couch, holding her phone tightly as if it were a lifeline. Maybe Lena was lying. Maybe she wanted to manipulate Hannah. Women like Lena always played angles. Maybe the message was bait. But one truth crushed every doubt. Cole had not sent a single text saying when he'd return. He never stayed silent unless he was drinking too much or planning to punish her. Her chest tightened. At 11:22 p.m., a noise outside made her jolt a car door slamming, too close to the window. Hannah stood quickly, heart hammering, and peered through the blinds. A black sedan idled at the curb, headlights cut through the falling snow. A figure stepped out, but it wasn't Cole. Just a neighbor running inside from the cold. Hannah backed away, knees trembling, embarrassed by her own fear. She rubbed her belly, trying to steady her breathing. "Stay calm," she whispered to the unborn baby. "We just have to get through tonight." But her body betrayed her. A wave of dizziness rolled over her, and she grabbed the counter to stay upright. Pregnancy, fatigue mixed with stress, forming a storm inside her. For a moment, she imagined packing a bag, slipping out the back door, taking the baby, and leaving everything behind. She pictured a bus station, a motel, a quiet place where footsteps didn't make her flinch. But reality crushed the fantasy quickly. Cole had all their money, the apartment lease was in his name, and the biggest fear of all, he had threatened more than once to take the baby if she ever tried to run. She didn't have the strength to fight lawyers or courts. Not alone. Her throat tightened, a sob rising, but she swallowed it. Crying never helped. Crying only made Cole angrier. She dimmed the living room light, hoping darkness might calm her racing nerves. She lowered herself onto the couch, pulled a thin blanket over her legs, and tried to focus on the soft hum of the refrigerator instead of the dread clawing at her ribcage. Minutes passed. Maybe an hour. Then footsteps in the hallway. Slow, heavy, familiar. Her blood turned to ice. She rose silently, stepping between the couch and the baby's crib, her breath shallow. The footsteps stopped right outside her door. A shadow moved beneath the crack. The doorknob twitched once, then again. Then, slowly, deliberately, it turned. The door creaked open, and Hannah understood in one terrible instant that Cole hadn't just come home angry, he had come home dangerous. Cole stepped into the apartment with the slow, deliberate swagger of a man who'd been drinking long enough to feel fearless, but not long enough to lose balance. Snow dusted his shoulders, melting into dark spots on his jacket. He didn't close the door softly, he let it slam, the sound ricocheting through the thin walls like a warning shot. Hannah's heart climbed into her throat. She straightened, trying to shield the crib from his line of sight. The air smelled of whiskey and expensive cologne, the kind he only wore when he wanted to impress someone who wasn't his wife. His eyes were glassy, but beneath the drunken haze was something sharper, something colder. He stared at her for a long moment. "You're awake?" "Yes," she whispered. "I was just waiting for me?" His lip curled. "Or for someone else?" Hannah stiffened. "No one else." Cole laughed, a short, humorless sound. He tossed his keys onto the table, missing by inches. They clattered to the floor. "Funny," he said, stepping closer. "Because I know you talked to your mother again." "I didn't." "She called you," he snapped. "That's the same thing." Hannah took a measured breath. She could smell the anger rolling off him, thick as gasoline. One spark, one misstep would ignite everything. Cole paced the small living room, knocking into furniture as if the space insulted him. His eyes caught on the leaning Christmas tree. "You bought this junk with my money?" "It was on clearance. I just wanted the baby to have." "You don't get to want things," he snarled. The baby stirred at the sudden rise in his voice. Hannah instinctively moved toward the crib, but Cole stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "Look at you," he said, "pretending to be some perfect mother when you can't even keep our finances straight. You embarrass me." Hannah's hands curled at her sides. "Cole, please. You're upset. You think you get to tell me what I am?" His voice cracked like a whip. He shoved her shoulder, not hard enough to knock her down, just enough to remind her he could. Her pulse pounded in her ears. Cole leaned in, his breath reeking of whiskey. "Do you know what Lena told me tonight?" Hannah's stomach dropped. "No." She told me you're dragging me down, that I'm stuck in this dump because of you, that I'll never be anything with you hanging around my neck. He smiled, a chilling, crooked thing. You know what? She's right. Hannah felt something inside her splinter. Cole, she texted me tonight. He blinked, confused. What? She told me you were with her. For the briefest moment, guilt flickered across his face, then rage swallowed it whole. That lying bitch, he spat. She's just jealous of you. The contradiction made no sense, but Hannah didn't argue. Logic had no place here. Cole grabbed her wrist suddenly, fingers digging in hard. You think you're better than her? Better than me? Hannah winced from the pressure. You're hurting me. Good. He yanked her closer. Her belly bumped his ribs, and for a split second, something flickered across his expression. Fear, resentment. But it vanished as quickly as it came. He shoved her backward. She stumbled into the coffee table, catching herself on the edge just in time. The baby woke fully now, crying, the shrill sound slicing through the apartment. Cole turned toward the crib, jaw tightening. Shut her up. Hannah stepped between him and the crib, chest heaving. Don't touch her. He froze. The challenge stunned him. What did you say? She didn't back down. For the first time in months, she met his eyes. I said, don't touch her. A silence stretched the dangerous kind, the kind that precedes impact. Cole's face twisted. You ungrateful. He lunged. Hannah tried to dart sideways, but he caught her arm, swinging her toward the wall. Her shoulder hit first. She cried out, gripping the crib to stay upright. Pain shot down her back. That's what you get, Cole hissed, for talking back. Then he grabbed her again, harder, raising his hand. And in that instant, Hannah understood. Tonight, he wasn't just angry. He was unhinged and willing to break her if it meant regaining control. The moment Cole's hand struck the wall beside her head, Hannah felt the old terror rise, a cold, suffocating fog she knew too well. But this time, something inside her refused to collapse. Maybe it was the baby crying behind her. Maybe it was the unborn child kicking beneath her ribs. Maybe it was the simple truth that she was running out of chances to survive him. She jerked free before his fingers closed around her throat. Cole staggered a step, thrown off by her sudden resistance. He wasn't used to her moving. He wasn't used to her fighting back. Hannah grabbed the edge of the crib, pulling it slightly away from him. Stop, she said, breath shaky but voice firmer than she felt. Please. The baby can't handle this. Cole laughed loud, sharp, ugly. You think I care? He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, eyes blazing. You're the reason everything's wrong. The bills, the debt, the pressure, all of it. You. That's not true. It is, he said, stepping toward her again. And you know it. If you had just stayed quiet, if you had just listened, I wouldn't have to teach you lessons. Hannah's pulse throbbed in her temples. Her mind raced through escape routes, but the apartment was too small, too boxed in. Cole stood between her and the door. She couldn't outrun him. All she could do was protect the children. He reached for her arm again, but she dodged, backing toward the kitchen. Her heel caught on the uneven carpet, sending her stumbling into the counter. Cole lunged, grabbing the front of her shirt. The fabric tightened against her throat, choking her. She clawed at his wrist, tears blurring her vision. Let go, she gasped. You want to talk back? He snarled. Talk now. She couldn't speak. Breath pressed thin between her ribs. Cole shoved her again, and her hip slammed into the counter's edge. A white-hot pain shot up her side. Panic rose. Was the baby okay? She couldn't think. She couldn't breathe. Suddenly, the baby wailed louder than ever, a desperate, trembling cry that cut through the chaos. Cole snapped his head toward the crib. Shut her up, he roared. You're scaring her, Hannah cried, voice cracking. But Cole didn't hear her or didn't care. He stormed toward the crib. Hannah moved before she thought. Stop, she screamed, stepping between him and the crib once more. You touch her and I swear. You swear what? Cole growled. You're nothing. He shoved her so hard her back slammed into the wall, her head whipped sideways, hitting the drywall with a dull thud. Stars burst across her vision. She felt herself sliding downward, legs buckling. She clutched at the wall, but her fingers slipped. The room tilted. Cole loomed over her, face red with fury. You never learn, do you? Her ears rang. Her breath came in shallow bursts. She tried to stand, tried to reach the crib again. but her body no longer obeyed her. She felt small, collapsing inward. Cole grabbed the crib with both hands, shaking it hard enough to rattle the screws. The baby screamed, high and terrified. "No," Hannah croaked. She crawled toward them, nails scraping the floor. Cole ignored her. He was muttering now, words slurred but venomous. "You ruin everything. You ruin me. You ruin my life. Maybe without you." He didn't finish. Hannah's hand closed around his ankle, weak, trembling, but enough. Cole kicked her away, sending her sprawling onto her side. Her vision blurred. Her limbs felt heavy, distant, like they belonged to someone else. Blood rushed in her ears, drowning out everything but the baby's cry. Cole towered over her, a shadow against the flickering Christmas lights. He raised his hand again. And Hannah's last conscious thought before the world dimmed was not fear for herself, but fear that he would hurt the children once she slipped away. For a moment, everything existed inside a muted tunnel. No walls, no lights, no sound except the faint, far-off cry of her baby. Hannah floated in the gray space between consciousness and nothingness. Her cheek pressed against the cold floor. A metallic taste filled her mouth. Her limbs felt disconnected, like her body had split into separate pieces she could no longer gather. Then, slowly, noise filtered back in. Cole was breathing hard. Heavy footsteps. A muttered curse. The creak of the crib as he jostled it again, impatient, irritated, as though the crying were nothing more than a failing smoke alarm he couldn't bother to fix. "Shut up," he snapped, voice thick. "God, just shut up." The sound cut into Hannah, sharper than any blow. She tried to move, but her fingers curled uselessly. Her vision pulsed with darkness at the edges. She forced her lungs to expand once, twice, until her vision steadied just enough to make out Cole's blurred shape hovering near the crib. No, her baby was helpless, terrified, and completely unprotected. Hannah pushed her palm flat to the ground, fingers splayed. Her arm trembled violently, but she lifted herself an inch. Then another. Pain ripped through her side, hot and blinding, but she welcomed it. Pain meant she was still here, still able to fight. Cole didn't notice her movement. He was too busy fumbling with the crib latch, muttering something about never having a moment of peace. The baby's cries were short, frantic gasps, the kind that made Hannah's heart clench even when things were normal. "Don't." Her voice cracked, barely a whisper. She swallowed and tried again. "Don't touch her." Cole turned slowly, gaze narrowing. "You're still awake?" "Jesus, Hannah, you don't quit." He walked toward her, steps uneven but purposeful. Hannah's stomach tightened, her instincts screamed. She tried to crawl backward, but her spine slammed into the wall she'd already hit once tonight. Cole crouched down, grabbing her chin between his fingers. "Look at you," he said, shaking her face lightly. "Can't even stay on your feet. And you think you can take my kid from me?" She tasted blood. "She's not yours to hurt." His expression twisted. "Everything in this apartment is mine, including her." Hannah's breath hitched. A surge of adrenaline shot through her, brief but bright. She slapped his hand away. It wasn't strong, it didn't even knock him back, but it stunned him enough to change the air instantly. "You ungrateful," he began. But he didn't finish. Because suddenly, from the hallway outside, something thudded, hard. Then again, a pounding fierce, rapid against their apartment door. Cole froze. Hannah blinked, confused. The pounding grew louder. "Open the door," a voice shouted. "Now!" Cole stood, swaying. "Who the hell?" The door rattled under another blow. "Cole Henderson," the voice boomed. "Open this door before I break it." Hannah's heart lurched. She knew that voice. Ethan. Her brain struggled to piece together how he knew, how he'd heard anything, how he'd gotten here so fast. But the details didn't matter. Hope, thin and trembling, flickered in her chest. Cole stormed toward the door. "This is my house," he muttered. "Nobody tells me." He yanked the door open. Ethan burst inside with the force of a man abandoning every restraint he'd ever practiced. He didn't wait for permission, didn't wait to assess. One glance, one single second, spent taking in the scene, told him everything. Hannah on the floor, Cole standing over her. The baby screaming. Ethan's jaw clenched so hard a vein popped near his temple. "Step away from her." Cole laughed, trying to puff himself up. "This doesn't concern you." But Ethan didn't blink. "It does now." For the first time that night, fear flickered across Cole's face. Hannah exhaled a shaking breath, letting her head fall against the wall. Help had come. What none of them knew yet was that Ethan hadn't come alone, and the next few minutes would shatter whatever lies Cole still thought he could hide behind. Ethan didn't wait for permission to step farther inside. His eyes swept the apartment, landing first on Hannah, slumped against the wall with one hand pressed to her stomach, then on the crib, rocking from the baby's terrified movements. Cole stood between them like a guard dog protecting a crime scene. But what Cole hadn't noticed was the second shadow behind Ethan. Officer Raymond Stark, broad shoulders, stern jaw, and a reputation for kicking down doors when paperwork moved too slowly, stepped into view. He'd been on duty nearby when Ethan pounded on his door upstairs, frantic, saying he heard something that didn't sound like an accident. Stark responded because Ethan wasn't just any neighbor. He was the man who'd testified in 2 domestic abuse cases. Stark never forgot. Now, staring at Cole, Stark's hand hovered dangerously close to his sidearm. "Sir, step away from the woman," he commanded. Cole stiffened. "This is my home. You can't just barge in." "Your neighbor called in signs of distress," Stark said coolly. "Now step back before you make this worse." Hannah tried to sit up straighter, dizzy from the effort. She wasn't sure whether speaking would help or escalate things. Her vision blurred, but she could make out Ethan's face shifting between fury and fear. Cole lifted both hands slightly, not in surrender, but in annoyance. "She fell," he said, voice edging on mockery. "She's clumsy. Pregnancy makes women unstable. You know how it is." Stark's expression darkened. "I didn't ask for medical opinions." "She's fine," Cole insisted. Ethan finally snapped. "She's not fine." His voice shook with controlled rage. "She was on the damn floor when I walked in. And the baby." "This is none of your business," Cole barked. Ethan stepped forward, closing the gap between them. "It became my business the second I heard furniture slam and a woman cry out." Cole smirked, though his posture faltered. "You think you can play hero? You think she needs saving?" Ethan didn't blink. "I think she needs space. And safety. 2 things you don't provide." Cole's jaw twitched, but he masked it with a scoff. "She's my wife." "Not your property," Officer Stark said flatly. Hannah sucked in a shaky breath. The room felt too tight, too fragile, as if one more wrong word would send everything crashing. Her skin burned where Cole had grabbed her earlier. Her head pulsed where she'd hit the wall. She could feel her unborn baby pressing hard against her ribs, movement, frantic, unsettled. Cole crossed his arms, stepping sideways to block the crib from Stark's view. "Look, officer, she exaggerates things. Emotional people do that. She's been—" A sharp, involuntary cry slipped from Hannah's throat as she tried to shift her weight. It cut through the room like a blade. Ethan turned instantly. "Hannah, don't move." Stark's patience evaporated. "That's enough," he snapped at Cole. "Step back, now." Instead of obeying, Cole leaned forward. "She doesn't need police. She needs discipline and stability." It was the wrong sentence to say to a man like Raymond Stark. In 2 strides, Stark grabbed Cole's arm, twisting it behind his back. Cole yelped, both shocked and furious. "What the hell? You just earned yourself a temporary removal from the premises," Stark said, voice ice cold. "Interfering with an injured pregnant woman? Not a smart look." "You can't do this," Cole protested, struggling. Ethan stepped closer to Hannah, kneeling beside her. "Don't try to move yet," he murmured, brushing dust off her sleeve. "Help's coming." Her eyes watered as she looked at him, her voice barely audible. "The baby. She wouldn't stop crying. He was going to—" "I know," Ethan said softly. "You're safe now." Cole thrashed harder. "She's lying. You don't know her like I do." "She doesn't have to convince me," Stark growled, restraining him. "Your behavior tells the story." For the first time that night, Hannah felt oxygen return to her lungs. Not enough to breathe steadily, but enough to remind her she was still alive. But the moment of relief shattered when Cole, desperate and wild-eyed, twisted his head toward her and shouted, "This isn't over, Hannah. You think they can save you? You think—" His words were cut off as Stark forced him toward the hallway. But the threat hung there, heavy and poisonous. And though Hannah was safe for the moment, she knew Cole wasn't done. He was only regrouping, planning, waiting for the next strike she might not survive. The hallway swallowed Cole's shouts as Officer Stark dragged him toward the elevator, but the echoes clung to the apartment like smoke. Hannah felt them vibrating in her bones. Even when the door finally slammed shut, her body wouldn't stop trembling. Fear lingered long after danger left. Ethan knelt beside her, careful not to touch her until she gave the smallest nod. Only then did he lift a blanket from the couch and drape it gently around her shoulders. His voice softened, steady, and grounding. "Hannah, stay with me. You took a hard fall." "I'm fine," she whispered, though nothing in her body agreed. "No, you're not," he said, "and you don't have to pretend." The baby cried again, a panicked, broken sound. Hannah instinctively reached for the crib, but her arm buckled. Ethan stepped in, lifting the baby with surprising gentleness. He cradled her against his chest, rocking her softly. The baby's cries weakened into hiccups. Something about watching a man handle her child with tenderness she had rarely seen made Hannah's throat tighten. "You should sit," he said. "I can't," she murmured. "I need to check on her. You need medical attention," Ethan interrupted. "Both of you." Her pulse spiked. Hospitals meant questions. Questions meant reports. Reports meant Cole finding another way to punish her later. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "If they call him—" "They won't," Ethan said firmly. "Officer Stark will make sure of that." Her breathing hitched. "Cole has people. A friend on the force. He'll twist everything." "I know," Ethan said quietly. "That's why Stark called an ambulance before coming in, and why I'm staying." Before she could respond, Stark returned, wiping snow from his uniform. "Ambulance is 2 minutes out," he said. "Henderson is downstairs, still screaming. We'll keep him contained." Hannah winced at the thought. "He's going to be furious." Stark crouched, so they were eye level. "What he wants doesn't matter tonight. You and that baby do." The sincerity nearly broke her. A sudden pressure tightened in her abdomen. Hannah gasped, bending forward. Ethan steadied her shoulder. "What is it?" "Just pain," she breathed, sharp. Stark's expression turned serious. "We'll let the paramedics check for trauma." Another contraction-like wave surged, making her vision blur. The baby inside her kicked hard, as if protesting the chaos. Ethan shifted the infant in his arms. "Hannah, listen to me," he said. "You don't have to go through this alone." Alone, the word pierced her deeper than any bruise. She had been alone for so long, even before Cole. Alone in Brooklyn, alone during pregnancy, alone every night she cried into a pillow so the baby wouldn't hear. Now Ethan was here, a stranger who didn't feel strange anymore. Tears blurred her eyes. "Why did you come?" she whispered. "How did you know?" Ethan hesitated. Not because he didn't have an answer, because he had too many. "I heard a sound," he said softly. "A sound I haven't heard in years. A sound I never wanted to hear again." His jaw tightened. "I lost someone once because I didn't act fast enough. I promised myself I'd never make that mistake again." Hannah stared at him, stunned. A memory flickered. The scrape, the crash, the chair sliding above her ceiling minutes before he arrived. He hadn't just heard noise. He'd heard history repeating. A knock sounded. 2 paramedics entered with a stretcher. The bright hallway light spilled into the apartment like a foreign sun. Stark gestured to them. "She's the priority." Hannah felt Ethan's hand hover near her back, not touching, waiting for permission. She gave a small nod. As they lifted her carefully, her gaze met Ethan's, trembling with fear, gratitude, and something she didn't recognize yet. Because tonight, for the first time, help hadn't come by accident, it had come for her. The ambulance lights painted the falling snow red and blue, turning the quiet Brooklyn street into something surreal. Hannah lay on the stretcher, gripping the thin blanket they'd draped over her. Every bump of the wheels sent a jolt through her aching body, but she kept telling herself, "The baby is still moving. That's good. That's something." Ethan walked beside her, carrying the infant with the fierce protectiveness of someone who'd already chosen a side. Officer Stark followed close behind, keeping an eye on Cole, who was still held by 2 additional officers near the patrol car. His voice cut through the cold night like a jagged knife. "Hannah, tell them the truth. Tell them you slipped. You're making a mistake." She shut her eyes. Hearing him was enough to rattle her bones. Inside the ambulance, warm air enveloped her. The paramedic, a calm woman named Rivera, checked her vitals, gently pressing along her abdomen. "Any sharp pains now?" "A little," Hannah whispered. "My head, too." "Possible concussion," Rivera murmured to her partner. "We'll run tests." The baby in Ethan's arms fussed softly, reaching for her mother. Hannah's heart twisted. "Can she ride with me?" she asked. "Of course," Rivera said. "We're not separating you tonight." Ethan stepped inside, settling into the corner seat with the baby. He looked too big for the small space, but somehow perfect in it, like he refused to be anywhere else. As the ambulance pulled away, siren low but persistent, Hannah exhaled shakily. Ethan leaned forward. "You don't have to talk," he said. "Just breathe." "We're almost there." She nodded, then turned her gaze toward him. "Cole, he'll say I lied. He always does." Ethan's jaw tightened. He can say whatever he wants, but he won't be the one writing the report tonight. The lights blurred past the windows. Snowflakes streaked like white sparks. "I'm scared," Hannah admitted. "I know." His voice softened. "But he can't reach you right now." She swallowed. "You don't understand. He has connections. He knows how to twist things. There was a time he made me believe it was all my fault." Ethan lifted his eyes. Something dark and familiar flickered there. That's how men like him survive. They rewrite the story until you can't recognize yourself inside it. "But that ends tonight." Hannah's lips trembled. "I don't know how to start over." "You already did," he said. "The moment you said, 'Don't touch her,' you did." The words cracked something open inside her, releasing a silent sob that shook her shoulders. She covered her mouth, trying to hide it. But the paramedic only adjusted her blanket and said gently, "You're allowed to be human, you know." The ambulance turned sharply. They were nearing the hospital. Ethan shifted the baby against his chest, rocking her as naturally as if he'd known her longer than one frightening hour. Hannah watched him, her breath catching. "You don't even know us," she whispered. He met her eyes. "I know enough." The baby's tiny hand wrapped around his shirt collar. He looked down at her with a softness Hannah hadn't seen in a long time, not from any man, and certainly not from the one who should have protected them. Rivera tapped her shoulder. "Hannah, when we get inside, we'll take you for scans. The officer will get your statement when you're ready, not before." Hannah nodded slowly. She wasn't sure she was ready. Telling the truth meant opening doors she had nailed shut. It meant exposing wounds she'd pretended didn't exist. But then she looked at her daughter safe, warm, asleep against Ethan's chest, and realized she couldn't stay silent anymore. The ambulance rolled to a stop. The back doors swung open, letting in cold air and bright lights. A team waited. Rivera squeezed her hand. "We've got you now." Ethan stood, adjusting the baby gently, offering Hannah a look that steadied her more than she expected. And as they lifted her out into the bright chaos of the hospital entrance, Hannah understood. This wasn't just the aftermath of violence, this was the beginning of the fight for her life. The emergency room buzzed with holiday chaos, nurses hurrying past strings of tinsel taped along the walls, overhead announcements echoing through cold fluorescent light, the distant hum of machines measuring other people's crises. But for Hannah, everything narrowed to a tunnel again. The stretcher wheels rattled. Ethan's voice blended with the paramedics. The baby's small whimpering carved through the noise like a thread pulling her forward. They brought her to a curtained bay. Rivera adjusted an oxygen clip on Hannah's finger, while another medic gently palpated her abdomen. "You've got bruising," he said, "but fetal movement is good. We'll get an ultrasound to confirm everything." Hannah nodded, but her thoughts weren't staying inside the room. Images of Cole, his rage, his accusations, his promise that this isn't over, kept flashing like broken film. Her hands trembled so badly she tucked them beneath the blanket. Ethan stood near her bed, rocking the baby with a rhythm that soothed them both. His presence anchored her to the moment. Whenever she drifted too close to panic, she found him again, steady eyes, calm breathing, a reassurance she didn't expect from someone who had been a stranger just hours ago. A nurse pulled the curtain wider. "Sir, we can take the infant to a warmer." "No," Hannah said, sharper than she intended. "Please. Let her stay." Ethan gave the nurse a small apologetic smile. "We're okay here." The nurse nodded and stepped out. Silence settled in briefly, gentler now, almost comforting. But it didn't last. Officer Stark appeared at the curtain, clipboard in hand, his uniform still dusted with snow, radio crackling faintly. He waited, respectful, before stepping closer. "Hannah, I need to ask some questions," he said softly. "But only if you're ready." Her throat tightened. "If I say what happened, will they let him out tonight?" "No," Stark said firmly. Not after what we witnessed. Not after what Ethan reported, and not after what we found on his record. Hannah blinked. Record? Ethan and Stark exchanged a quick glance, one that made her stomach flip. Stark lowered his voice. This isn't his first complaint, or even the second. We're pulling old reports. Looks like someone protected him before. Fear laced her spine. He has a friend on the force. Officer Klein. Stark's jaw ticked. We know. Klein won't be involved. Not anymore. A breath she didn't know she was holding slid out of her. Ethan stepped closer, still holding her baby. Hannah, whatever you tell him, I'll be right here. A small wave of courage rose inside her. Not enough to stand, not enough to feel strong, but enough to begin. She nodded. Stark gently guided her through the events of the night. Hannah recounted everything: Cole's anger, the shove, the threats, the choking grip, the fall that nearly knocked her out. Speaking the words felt like extracting splinters from her own skin. It hurt, but once removed, breathing came easier. When she finished, Stark clicked his pen, eyes harsh with determination. This is enough, he said. He's not walking out anytime soon. Hannah sagged into the pillow. Relief washed over her, weak but real. But then her phone buzzed. Ethan frowned, reaching for the bedside table. Unknown number, he said. Hannah froze. Don't open it. But the screen lit up again. A voicemail. Then a second. Then a text. You think you're clever? This isn't done. Her pulse spiked. He's already calling? Stark stepped forward. Let me. He picked up the phone and scrolled, his expression hardening with every new notification. He called from the holding area, Stark said. He must have begged another officer to let him dial. That stops now. He looked straight at her. We'll file an emergency protective order tonight. Tears stung, her eyes exhaustion, fear, and gratitude tangled inside her chest. Ethan set the baby gently beside Hannah, resting a supportive hand near her shoulder, not touching, but close enough to feel. Listen to me, he said softly. This is the beginning, not the end. Cole's losing control because you finally took it back. Hannah stared at her sleeping daughter, safe and warm now. For the first time, she believed it. What she didn't know was that Cole had already made one final call to someone far more dangerous than himself, and someone who would do anything to protect their secret. The ultrasound room was dim, lit only by a soft blue monitor glow and a single lamp in the corner. Hannah lay on the padded table, gown rustling against her skin, her nerves stretched so tight she felt she might snap. A technician guided the probe gently across her abdomen, murmuring measurements under her breath. The rhythmic thump of the baby's heartbeat filled the small room, steady, strong, a sound that made Hannah's eyes flood with relief. She's doing well, the technician said with a calm smile. No signs of distress. You'll want to rest for a few days, but your baby is resilient. Resilient. Hannah wished she could feel the same, but her body ached everywhere. Her head pulsed sharply with each breath. Bruises were already blooming under her gown. The technician stepped out to print the images. Ethan waited just outside the door, leaning against the wall. His sleeves were rolled to the elbows, hair mussed from running his hands through it. When Hannah emerged, he straightened immediately. Everything okay? She's fine, Hannah said softly, one hand resting on her stomach. They said she's strong. Ethan exhaled, a breath he'd been holding since the ambulance ride. Good. That's really good. He walked beside her, down the hallway, carrying her baby again as if it were second nature. Stark met them halfway, his expression grim. Hannah, he said, lowering his voice, I have updates. Her stomach tightened. Is Cole? Still in custody, Stark said, but he's been making noise. Threats mostly, rambling. He tried calling you again. We confiscated the phone. Hannah closed her eyes briefly. Why won't he stop? Because he's losing control, Ethan said gently. And control is the only thing he's ever loved. Stark continued, there's more. He glanced around, then motioned them into an empty consultation room. Once the door shut, he held up a small evidence bag. Inside was a phone, not Cole's. A different one. This was found on him, Stark said. He tried to hide it in his boot, locked, but he used it right before we got him fully restrained. Hannah's breath hitched. Who did he call? Stark tapped the bag. A number flagged in an unrelated investigation. Belongs to Officer Klein. Hannah felt her blood run cold. Cole's friend. More than a friend, Stark muttered. A man with a habit of making reports disappear. Several domestic cases that should have gone to the DA never made it past the initial filing. We're reviewing them now. Ethan swore under his breath. Hannah's voice shook. So Cole thinks Klein can get him out? He thought that. Stark's eyes hardened. But not anymore. Internal Affairs has been watching Klein for months. Cole choosing tonight to call him just added fuel to their fire. A strange, shaky relief fluttered inside her. But it didn't last. Because then Stark added, but Klein is reacting. And he's not reacting well. A chill crawled up Hannah's spine. What? What does that mean? Stark hesitated. It means he tried to access your file in the system 20 minutes ago. He was flagged. He knows your name now. He knows where you live. Hannah's legs wobbled. Ethan dropped into a crouch beside her, steadying her. Hey, look at me. Breathe. He's not getting near you. Stark stepped closer, voice steady, almost gentle. We're issuing a protective detail for the night. You won't be going home. Not until we know Klein is contained. Hannah swallowed hard. So I'm not safe, even here. You are safe, Ethan insisted. Because we're not leaving you alone in this. She looked from Ethan to Stark, two men who should have been strangers, but now stood between her and the world with a conviction she didn't understand. The baby shifted in Ethan's arms. A tiny hand reached toward Hannah, fingers curling in the air. Hannah touched them, tears blurring her vision. I never wanted trouble, she whispered. I just wanted a family. A quiet life. Ethan's eyes softened, but his voice stayed firm. You will have one. But first, we end this, for good. Stark nodded. Tonight was round one. Tomorrow, we take the fight to him. Hannah wiped her cheek, gathering strength she didn't know she still possessed. Because if Cole and Officer Klein thought she was alone, if they thought she was the same woman they pushed around for years, they were about to learn how wrong they were. They moved Hannah to a private observation room on the 4th floor. Small, quiet, and dimly lit, with a single window overlooking the snow-covered parking lot. The nurse insisted she lie down, hooking her to monitors that beeped softly in the background. Ethan sat beside the bed, rocking her baby gently, his presence grounding her more than the steady IV drip in her arm. For the first time since Cole's rage exploded, Hannah felt the world slow. Not safe, not yet, but slower, like she could finally inhale without flinching. But peace never lasted long in her life. Officer Stark returned with a folder under his arm, his expression, the grave kind that meant the night was far from over. He closed the door behind him. Hannah, we found something. Ethan straightened. What now? Stark laid the folder on the small table. Internal Affairs sent over partial files from Klein's activity logs. He glanced at Hannah. It's bad. Her pulse quickened. Bad how? Stark opened the folder. 3 domestic violence reports filed by neighbors or co-workers over the past 4 years, all involving Cole. All marked insufficient evidence, all dismissed. Hannah felt her breath shorten. I didn't know other people reported him. You weren't supposed to, Stark said. Klein filed them under classifications that don't alert victims. Ethan's voice dropped low and dangerous. So Klein protected him for years. Stark nodded. It gets worse. Klein also accessed your address, workplace, emergency contacts, information he had no reason to pull. Hannah's stomach twisted. Why would he need that? To intimidate you, Stark said bluntly. To warn you not to testify. Cole's not smart enough to organize that kind of pressure alone. Someone guided him. Ethan's hand tightened on the crib railing. Where is Klein now? Suspended pending investigation, Stark replied. But he's unpredictable when cornered. We have to assume he'll try something. Hannah's mouth went dry. So I'm targeted? Stark crouched to meet her eyes. Listen to me carefully. You are protected tonight. Tomorrow you'll have a formal safety plan, legal assistance, and an advocate. But we need evidence to ensure neither of them walks free. Hannah swallowed. What kind of evidence? Silence fell. Only the monitor beeped steadily beside her. Ethan finally spoke. Hannah, what about your phone? Messages? Pictures? Anything he sent? She shook her head. He never texted threats. He always said them out loud. He never leaves a trail. Stark tapped his pen. What about the apartment? Cameras? Neighbors? Anything that recorded tonight? I don't know. she whispered. There's a maintenance camera in the hallway, but Cole said it was broken. Stark's brows lifted. Broken or disabled? Hannah paused. Her heart kicked. I don't know. Ethan stood, energized. We need that camera. We will get it, Stark assured. But that alone won't be enough to bury him, not with Klein's fingerprints all over his history. Hannah's voice trembled. What else do you need? Stark hesitated, then said something that made the room tilt. A recording of him admitting what he did. Hannah stared at him. You want me to talk to him? No, Ethan snapped instantly. Absolutely not. But Stark held up a hand. Calm. I'm not asking her to meet him, but someone could call him at the holding facility. Hannah shook her head violently. He'll know it's a trap. He'll twist it. He always does. Not if he thinks you're breaking, Stark replied. Not if he thinks you're afraid and ready to back down. Ethan's jaw clenched. She's not doing that. She's barely stable. I agree, Stark said, which is why someone else will talk to him. Both turned to him sharply. Stark thumbed through the file. Cole only confides in people he thinks he controls. People who feed his ego. People who tell him what he wants to hear. He slid a photo onto the table. Lena. Hannah's breath caught. She'd never help me. Stark's eyes hardened. She doesn't have to help you. She just has to help herself. Ethan understood instantly. Blackmail. Leverage, Stark corrected. She's pregnant. She's tied to Cole, and she has no idea how deep this goes. Hannah glanced at the sleeping baby. So she's the key. Stark nodded. If Lena believes Cole will ruin her life, she might flip. Hannah closed her eyes, absorbing everything the broken reports. Klein's involvement, Lena's possible role. The danger had grown bigger, darker, more tangled than she imagined. And yet, somewhere inside the fear, something steadier ignited, resolve. Because if Lena Carter was the one thread holding Cole's lies together, then Hannah was finally ready to pull. Lena Carter wasn't used to waking up to 30 missed calls. She rolled over in bed, the Manhattan skyline barely visible through her half-closed blinds, and blinked at her phone. Cole's name filled the screen over and over. Missed calls, missed calls, missed calls. And then one voicemail from an unknown number. And then another. Her stomach twisted, an unfamiliar dread crawling up her spine. She'd expected Cole to text her last night after the showroom party, to apologize for drinking too much, to beg for reassurance, to promise he would handle things with Hannah soon. Instead, silence. And now this. She clicked the first voicemail. Cole's slurred voice exploded through the phone speaker. You did this. You told her. You made it worse. Lena, answer the damn phone. She ripped the phone away, pulse pounding. Oh God, she whispered. The second voicemail was worse, rambling, angry, words tripping over each other so fast they barely made sense. And somewhere in the middle, he said something that froze her blood. They're taking her side. Klein needs to fix this, before everything blows up. Lena sat up sharply. Klein? She didn't know him personally, but everybody at the dealership knew Cole had a friend in the NYPD. Someone who helped him out of misunderstandings. Someone who made paperwork vanish. But now Cole was panicking, which meant his safety net was unraveling. She went to the bathroom, splashed water on her face, and stared into the mirror. Her reflection didn't match the fierce woman she pretended to be. Her mascara smudged, her eyes too wide, her confidence cracked. She'd always thought she could control Cole, steer him, use him. But last night, she saw something in him she couldn't quite name, something unstable, dangerous. Something she didn't want anywhere near her or the baby she carried. Her hands drifted to her stomach. She hadn't planned on being a mother yet. She certainly hadn't planned on becoming entangled in a man who had more demons than dollars. But Cole was supposed to be temporary, a stepping stone, a transition, not a threat. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. It's about Cole. Officer Stark. Her breath caught. She stared at the message, then at her trembling hands. Another buzz followed. You're not in trouble. But you will be if you ignore this. Lena swallowed hard. She grabbed her coat, keys, and purse and left her apartment before she could reconsider. Officer Stark arranged the meeting in a small waiting room adjacent to Hannah's hospital floor. A quiet, carpeted space meant for families and conversations too emotional for hallways. When Lena entered, he stood. Ethan was seated nearby, holding Hannah's baby in his lap, feeding her with the steadiness of someone whose hands had memorized the rhythm of protection. Lena hesitated, unsure if she should run. "Hannah is in an exam room," Stark said calmly. "You won't see her unless she agrees." Lena nodded stiffly. "Why am I here?" Stark didn't waste time. He set a thin file on the table. "Because Cole called you last night. Because he thinks you'll cover for him. And because he's going down for multiple charges, not just domestic assault." Lena blinked. "Multiple?" Stark slid the file closer. Inside were printed copies of insurance documents, policies signed by Cole, listing Hannah as the insured and himself as the beneficiary. Lena's heart stopped. "Is this life insurance?" Ethan's voice hardened. "He took out more than one." She backed away a step. No, Cole wouldn't. He wouldn't kill her." But the moment she said it, she heard every red flag she'd ignored. The nights he talked about needing a reset. The bitterness when he mentioned debt. The way he said Hannah was a problem he needed to solve. Stark held her gaze. "He also mentioned you when he was arrested. Said you knew what he wanted. Said you were part of it." Lena's knees buckled. She dropped into a chair. "I didn't know. I swear this wasn't what I—" Ethan interrupted sharply. "We're not here to punish you. We're here because you're the only person Cole will talk to." Lena looked between them. "You want me to call him?" Stark nodded. "We need him to incriminate himself. He trusts you. You tell him Hannah might not press charges. You tell him you're scared. You tell him whatever you need to, but you keep him talking." Lena's throat tightened. "And if he finds out I helped you?" "He won't," Stark said firmly. "We'll protect you. And your baby." Lena froze. They knew. Ethan softened slightly. "Lena, this is your chance to walk away from him. Forever." Lena took a trembling breath. Then another. Finally, she nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll make the call." What none of them realized was that when Lena dialed Cole, the truth she'd drag out of him would be far darker and far more explosive than any of them were prepared for. Lena's hands shook as she dialed the number Stark provided. The line connected to the holding facility, routed through a monitored channel set up by Internal Affairs. Stark positioned a small recorder on the table, while Ethan held Hannah's baby near the window, trying to keep the child calm. The room felt too still, too breathless, as though every suspended second carried weight. A click, a brief hum, then Cole's voice slithered through the speaker, hoarse, furious, and unmistakably unstable. "Lena? Finally, why the hell didn't you answer me last night?" Lena swallowed, forcing her voice to tremble. "Cole, I was scared." "Scared?" he snapped. "You think you're scared? I'm sitting in a damn cell because of you." Stark silently mouthed, "Good, keep him talking." Lena twisted a strand of hair nervously. "I didn't call the cops, Cole." "Doesn't matter. They already made up their minds," Cole hissed. "Klein's useless. Says he can't do anything until things cool down." The coward. Ethan and Stark exchanged a sharp glance. Cole continued, voice rising. "Everything was fine until tonight. I had a plan, Lena. A good one. And you." He exhaled sharply. "You ruined it." Lena's chest tightened. "What? Plan?" A beat of silence. Then Cole laughed, a low, disjointed sound. "You know what plan. The same one we talked about. The same one you pushed me toward." Lena froze. "We?" Stark leaned forward, eyes narrowed. Lena forced her voice smaller. "Cole, what did I say? I don't remember." "You said I needed to end it," Cole snapped. "You said she'd trap me forever if I didn't act. And you were right. You always are." Lena felt the blood drain from her face. Cole wasn't done. "I told you I had it figured out. The insurance payout. The fall down the stairs, clean, fast, and you said—" He stopped abruptly, breath hitching. Stark mouthed urgently. "Ask what he meant." Lena's voice cracked. "Cole, what did I say?" "You told me," he whispered, almost lovingly, "that sometimes accidents have to be helped along." Lena recoiled as if slapped. I never meant, Cole. I didn't think." "Oh, please," Cole sneered. "Don't act innocent. You knew exactly what you were doing." Ethan stood slowly, every muscle rigid. The baby stirred in his arms, sensing the tension. Cole wasn't finished. "You said the money would get us out of debt," he rambled. "Said we could finally leave New York. Start fresh. You gave me the idea." Lena felt sick. "I didn't, Cole, I swear." "You're going to abandon me now?" Cole shouted. After everything? After last night? Lena's throat locked. She knew she had to push him further. Stark's eyes were urging her on, but the truth was swallowing her whole. She had nudged Cole toward ending things with Hannah. She had thrown gasoline without realizing he'd been holding a match. But she had never imagined this. Her voice trembled. "Cole, what were you going to do?" The line crackled. Cole breathed heavily. "Doesn't matter," he said finally. "It was supposed to happen tonight. She was supposed to slip, fall, scream, then silence, and then you and me." He drifted off, unable to contain his own fantasy. Lena whispered, "And the baby?" Cole scoffed. "Collateral. Kids survive worse." Ethan made a sound low, murderous, before turning away, gripping the crib railing to keep from breaking something. Stark wrote furiously, jaw tight with disgust. Lena steadied herself. "Cole, they have evidence. They're saying Hannah didn't fall." "Evidence?" Cole barked. "There is no evidence. Camera's gone. Klein made sure of it. Everything was under control until that neighbor stuck his nose in." Ethan froze mid-step. "Ethan Rowe," Cole snarled. "Self-righteous punk. Should have minded his business." Stark pointed aggressively. "Push him. Get him angry." Lena inhaled shakily. "Cole, what if I tell them you didn't mean to? What if I say Hannah tripped on her own?" Cole exhaled in relief. "Exactly. That's what you'll do. You'll tell them you exaggerated, that you misunderstood. You'll tell them—" "But what if," Lena cut in, "I tell them you wanted to kill her?" Silence. Stark's eyes widened. Ethan's breath stalled. Then Cole exploded. "You listen to me," he roared. "If you say one word, your life will fall apart faster than hers did. I'll destroy you. I'll expose every secret you have. You think you're better than her? You're not. You're nothing without me. Nothing." Stark ended the call. The room shook with the aftermath. Lena collapsed into the chair, shaking violently. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I didn't know he meant murder." Ethan finally faced her, eyes dark but steady. "You did the right thing tonight." Stark stood, grabbing the recorder with purpose. "This," he said, voice steel, "is enough to bury him and to take down the cop who protected him." Lena exhaled a trembling breath, tears spilling freely. But Ethan glanced toward Hannah's closed hospital room door. "Now," he said softly, "we have to tell her." Because the truth was no longer just evidence, it was a wound Hannah needed to see before she could ever begin to heal. Hannah lay propped against the hospital pillows, eyes half closed, exhaustion sinking into her bones. The monitor beside her beeped steadily, matching the slow rhythm she forced herself to breathe. She had survived the night, but her mind had not caught up. Every time she blinked, she saw Cole's shadow, felt the cold floor under her cheek, heard the baby screaming. She kept telling herself she was safe, but her body wasn't ready to believe it. When the door opened, she tensed. But it was Ethan, gentle, steady Ethan, holding her baby in one arm and a warm blanket in the other. Behind him came Officer Stark and Lena. Hannah's breath faltered. "What is she doing here?" Hannah whispered, shoulders tightening. "It's okay," Ethan said softly. "She's not here to hurt you." Lena stepped forward slowly, hands clasped, guilt etched into every line of her face. "Hannah, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen." Hannah stared, stunned by the audacity. "You were with him. You pushed him. You told him." "I did," Lena whispered. "And I was wrong. I didn't know he wanted you gone. Not like that, not permanently." Hannah swallowed hard. "He would have killed me." No one contradicted her. Stark set a recorder on the tray table. "We got him," he said, "because of what Lena helped us uncover." Hannah's gaze flicked between them. "What do you mean?" Ethan handed her the baby before sitting beside her. "Hannah," Cole confessed on the phone, "not just to hurting you, to planning something worse." Her fingers tightened protectively around her daughter. "What did he say?" Stark exhaled. "He intended to stage an accident. The life insurance policy he took out made that clear." Hannah froze. Every sound in the room seemed to vanish. She felt the world tilt beneath her, a wave of nausea sweeping through. "Insurance?" she whispered. "He insured me?" "Twice," Stark said. Hannah gripped the blanket. A hollow ache opened up in her chest. She had suspected danger. She had feared anger. But premeditation, the realization, clawed through her like ice. Ethan leaned closer. "You didn't imagine it. You weren't dramatic. You weren't weak, he really was planning something. Tears filled her eyes, hot and uncontrollable. Why? Why would he do that to the mother of his child? Lena wiped her cheek with a shaking hand. Because he didn't see you as a person, he saw you as a problem. And I'm sorry, truly, deeply sorry, that I didn't realize how sick he was sooner. Hannah looked at her baby, sleeping peacefully now against her chest. The warmth of that tiny body kept her from shattering completely. She could have died, Hannah whispered. He could have hurt her trying to hurt me. He won't touch either of you again, Stark said firmly. The recording will hold up in court. Internal Affairs is taking Klein down too. You're protected now. Protected. The word felt foreign. What happens next? Hannah asked. Stark lifted the folder. Now the district attorney steps in. Charges will be upgraded. Restraining orders will be permanent. And custody. He glanced at Ethan. Let's just say Cole won't have much of a voice in that anymore. Relief washed over her so forcefully she almost sagged sideways. But beneath it, something else stirred, a quiet, rising strength she hadn't felt in years. Ethan rested a careful hand near hers. You're not alone, Hannah. Not now. Not ever again. Hannah looked at Lena, then Stark, then Ethan holding her daughter's tiny sock. Her life had fractured, but maybe, just maybe, the pieces could be rebuilt into something new. What Hannah didn't know was that tomorrow's court proceedings would expose even deeper betrayals and give her a chance to reclaim everything Cole had stolen from her. The courtroom the next morning felt colder than the hospital had. Not physically, there was stale heating humming from the vents, but emotionally, the place carried a chill that sank straight into Hannah's spine. She sat at the petitioner's table beside a victim's advocate the DA had assigned, her hands resting protectively on her baby's carrier. Ethan sat directly behind her, close enough that she could feel his presence steadying her. Officer Stark stood near the door, posture rigid, watching everything. Across the aisle, escorted in handcuffs, was Cole. He looked smaller than she remembered, less like the giant who towered over her last night, and more like a man carved from brittle wood, dry, cracking, ready to splinter under pressure. But his eyes were the same, cold, possessive, burning with the belief that none of them had authority over him. When his gaze landed on Hannah, he smirked. Her stomach twisted, but she didn't look away. Judge Kensington, a stern woman with silver-rimmed glasses, entered. The bailiff called the court to order. Proceedings began. The assistant district attorney laid out the charges: aggravated assault, attempted homicide, child endangerment, witness intimidation, conspiracy with a corrupt officer, and insurance fraud. Each word echoed off the chamber walls, landing like weighted stones. Cole scoffed, shaking his head. This is ridiculous. I'm a victim of lies. Judge Kensington raised a hand. Mr. Henderson, speak only when addressed. Cole grinned as if the whole room was a joke. Yes, Your Honor. The ADA began presenting evidence. Medical reports, photos of Hannah's bruises, Officer Stark's sworn statement, the maintenance logs proving the hallway camera had been tampered with. Then came the recording. Cole's voice filled the courtroom. She was supposed to slip, fall, scream, then silence. Every syllable scraped across Hannah's skin. She curled her fingers into fists to anchor herself. Ethan leaned forward, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder, not touching skin, just the fabric of her sweater, just enough to say, I'm here. Cole's mask cracked. That recording was manipulated. Lena was called to the stand next. She looked nervous but determined, her hands clasped tightly. When the ADA asked whether Cole ever discussed harming Hannah, Lena nodded. Yes, she said, voice thin but clear. He said he wanted freedom. He said sometimes accidents happen in messy marriages. I didn't know he planned to act on it, but I didn't stop him either, and I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Cole snapped. You lying little. Mr. Henderson, the judge barked. One more outburst and I'll hold you in contempt. Cole slumped back, but his glare toward Lena was lethal. Then the ADA introduced the final blow. Officer Klein's arrest report. Charges: evidence destruction, policy tampering, obstruction of justice. Klein had already confessed to covering for Cole in prior incidents. The courtroom buzzed. Cole jerked upright. He can't do that. He promised, he said he'd fix it. Judge Kensington adjusted her glasses. Mr. Henderson, it appears every person you relied on has now testified or confessed against you. Ethan exhaled quietly behind Hannah. Stark folded his arms, satisfied. Hannah finally lifted her chin. She looked at Cole not as a frightened wife, not as a trapped victim, but as a woman rising from the ashes of everything he'd tried to destroy. And she realized something profound. He had no power left. When given the chance to make a statement, Hannah stood slowly. The room hushed. Her voice was soft but unwavering. "I loved the man I thought he was," she began. "But he hurt me. Over and over, and he almost took everything from me, including my children. Today isn't about revenge, it's about telling the truth, finally, without fear. I just want peace. For myself, for my daughter, and for the baby I'm carrying, that's all." Cole laughed a hollow, desperate sound. "You think you'll get peace without me? You think anyone's going to save you? Him?" He jerked his head toward Ethan. "He'll get bored. They all do." Ethan stood then, protective fire in his eyes. But Hannah answered first. Calm, steady. "I already saved myself," she said. The judge nodded slowly, as though the moment had sealed something important. And when the verdict came, Cole Henderson's world collapsed all at once, exactly the way he'd intended Hannah's to fall. The courtroom emptied slowly, murmurs fading into the hallway like dust settling after an explosion. Hannah remained seated for several moments, gripping the baby carrier with both hands, her breath shaking with relief she couldn't yet process. The judge's final ruling still echoed in her ears. Cole Henderson, remanded without bail, pending multiple felony charges. Permanent restraining order granted. Full custody to the mother. It was over. Not the healing, not the rebuilding, but the terror, the constant, gnawing fear had finally lost its grip. Ethan approached her gently. "Hannah," he said softly, "it's done." She looked up at him, eyes shining. "I never thought I'd see a day like this. A day he couldn't reach me." "You made it happen," Ethan replied. "You told the truth. You protected your children. You saved yourself." Hannah shook her head. "No, I just survived. You, Stark, even Lena, you all saved me." Ethan smiled, but there was something earnest in his gaze, something vulnerable she hadn't seen before. "You give us too much credit." Officer Stark approached then, offering a small nod of respect. "I wanted to say congratulations," he said. "And to let you know, our department is assigning continued protection for a while. Just a precaution." "Thank you," Hannah said, her voice thick. "For everything." He cleared his throat. "You did the hardest part. Now it's time to live." When Stark left, Hannah stood slowly. Her legs trembled, but Ethan steadied her with a gentle hand at her elbow. The baby stirred, stretching tiny fingers toward him. Ethan reached out, brushing the child's hand lightly, as though afraid she might break. "You hungry?" he asked Hannah. "We could grab something warm. Hospital food isn't exactly celebratory." She laughed, a real laugh, soft and cracked, but hers. "I haven't eaten since last night." "Then let me take you somewhere," he said. "Somewhere peaceful." They walked out of the courthouse into winter air, so crisp it felt new. Snowflakes drifted like quiet blessings. The city moved around them, horns, footsteps, chatter, but Hannah felt strangely insulated, wrapped in a kind of calm she'd forgotten existed. Ethan led her across the street to a small cafe with foggy windows and twinkling lights strung along the frames. Inside, warmth enveloped them. They sat near the window, the baby sleeping peacefully between them. Hannah wrapped her fingers around a cup of tea, savoring the simple comfort. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Hannah broke the silence. "I don't know what happens now." Ethan leaned back slightly, considering. "Whatever you want to happen. You get to choose now. Not him, not fear. You." She stared into her tea. "I want safety, stability, a home where my children don't have to hide. And you'll have that," Ethan said steadily. "You're stronger than you think." Her eyes lifted to meet his. "What about you? Why are you still here, Ethan?" "You don't owe me anything." He hesitated, then spoke honestly. "I know what it's like to lose someone to violence. I know what regret feels like. I couldn't save my wife, but I could be here for you, not to replace anything, not to fix you, but to stand beside you if you'll let me." Hannah's heart pressed against her ribs. She didn't know what the future looked like, but she recognized sincerity when she heard it. She reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. "Stay," she whispered. His hand closed around hers, warm and certain. "As long as you want me." Later that evening, Ethan drove them to her new temporary housing, arranged by the Advocate program, a safe, clean apartment overlooking a small courtyard dusted with snow. Before she stepped inside, he paused, touching her shoulder gently. "You're free now, Hannah." She exhaled, feeling the truth settle deep inside her. "For the first time," she said softly, "I believe that." And as the door closed behind her, warmth, safety, and possibility filling the space, Hannah Whitmore stepped into the first night of the life she chose, not the one she survived. And just like that, our story comes to an end. But you're still here, aren't you? If you're listening right now, it means something in this journey touched your heart in a way only real pain and real healing can. What Hannah's story reminds us is simple, but powerful. No darkness lasts forever when you decide to step toward the light. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Hannah's suffering didn't break her, it became the path to her freedom. And that's a truth every one of us can carry into our own lives. You deserve safety. You deserve love. You deserve a future built from your strength, not your fear. And if today you feel stuck, remember this. Healing is not a single moment. It's a choice you make again and again, until one day you wake up and realize the storm no longer controls you. If this story reached you, if it made you feel seen, understood, or less alone, then please, my wonderful friends, like this video, share it with someone who needs courage, and subscribe to the channel so we can keep walking through these stories together. You matter, your voice matters, and your next chapter can begin whenever you decide.